Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive Analysis, but today's going to be an extra special episode as we're going to be doing a different subsector of analysis today, as we're going to be doing individual Deep Dive Analysis, as we're going directly into one player of one team in the RLCS scene. And we might eventually spread out to people outside the RLCS, kind of have a look into the upcoming talent. But today we're going to be going over G2 Esports, or G2 Strides, Daniel. Daniel, of course, very solid player. He's been called a prodigy by many, and he's been around for a long time. Made his first LAN and his first ever split in the RLCS with SSG, Arsenal, and Rebels, and they did pretty well. I believe they made top 3, if I remember correctly, only losing to Queso. Eventually turned into Moist, the London major winners. And they lost, and I believe it was a Game 7 spectacle where they somehow, Queso managed to make a last-second save. But overall, very solid player is Daniel. But I know from my team deep dive analysis that Daniel actually had a lot of issues when it came to the individual side of the game, and he was very similar to a Tao for Karma and Core. He is the main reason why G2 gets scored on all the time. Not because of his mechanics or anything like that, but due to his ability to read the play, his ability to support properly. Now, of course, the last time we analyzed G2 was back during Qualifier 2, a long time ago at this point. So now we're going to be seeing how much has Daniel improved on the individual front. And of course, we're going to be looking at the major, we're going to be looking at mostly the major games, and maybe at the very end, we'll probably look at a twos game as well, just to see how well he's improving in twos. Because there is an issue with a lot of NA players where they, even with the ones that grind ranked, they don't really play ranked to improve. They kind of just want to feel as comfortable as possible. And anybody who knows anything about improving, you have to be uncomfortable in order to improve. You got to try, fail, learn, repeat in order to become the best person you can be. And a lot of NA players, they kind of just try to feel comfortable. They do what they can, what they know works to win, even if logically whatever they're doing is just a bad habit or it may not be the best way to improve and to win. So overall, we might look at a 2s replay after this, but we're going to mainly stick to 3s for now, since that's what I normally prioritize for these videos. But without further ado, let's look at G2. So first of all, as always, we're going to start off with a Swiss stage match. And of course, G2, they played against Gladiators. Power didn't do horribly. They did just come off a win against Oxygen at this major. And Power, I do respect as a team, but it looked like mentally Power were not on. And G2 mentally didn't look like they were on playing against Falcons. But I do think, was there any game against Falcons where it was close? It looks like Game 2. So you know what? Let's look at Game 2 first, and then we'll look at the Gen G match, the infamous Gen G match. I didn't get to watch it live, sadly, but I got to listen to the commentary. It was really, really funny, and hopefully we get to see something like that again in the future with Daz and T-Bates doing that. But alright, so G2 versus Falcons. Let's look at Daniel's stats real quick. Normally, so people tend to get misconstrued with stats all the time. Stats don't mean everything. Don't get me wrong. You can use stats as a way to see where a player might be weak, but it doesn't guarantee it, because depending on who you're playing against, how individual interprets the game can sometimes get better or worse. So for example, one thing I look at normally is our demos. We want a positive ratio between demos inflicted versus demos taken. And we can see Daniel is negative on demos. So we're going to look to see how Daniel does off the ball. He technically only got demoed once, but the fact that he only got this many demos shows me that there might be an issue where he's not going forward as third man to do his job, or he's rushing back. Those are two different things that could happen. It doesn't guarantee that's happening. Maybe he went for demos and missed, but we don't know until we actually look. And a question from Gatter Gaming. Will this be on YouTube or not? Yes, this will be on YouTube. After this, I'm going to download it, export it, and it should be on YouTube. If not tomorrow, it should be there by Tuesday at the very least. So, overall, it will be there no matter what. And I don't really cut anything out of these deep dive analysis. This is purely for the people who love Rocket League and want to really learn how the high level game is played. So there you go. And then Daniel, let's see from a boost perspective. He has a high average boost, but he also has the highest big pad count. and he has the lowest small pad count, but he does have a ton of stolen boost. So here, what we can do is we can say, oh, he has a negative demo ratio, but he's really big on stolen big pads. So that means he is pushing forward as third man, but maybe he's just grabbing a big pad and leaving, rather than fully diving into his job. Do you have a link to your YouTube? Just search up HVC Luke, and you should be able to find it. I might, if you type !socials, it might appear though. So you can do that. I would do it myself, but for some reason my chat isn't linked here. hey Silk, I saw your comment and a couple others today, so that did make me laugh under my tweet. But alright, and then generally we look at the ground stat. Normally we look in between 50 and 60 a lot of the time. Although we can see that Daniel's a little bit low, so maybe he's pre-jumping where he shouldn't. It doesn't, but as I said, stats don't guarantee there's an issue. It just means there can be an issue. So overall, let's get started here with the deep dive analysis. Now there's going to be a couple things that we're going to be looking at when it comes to high-level Rocket League from the individual. So, of course, we're only looking at the individual today, but we can split it up into two parts. We're going to look at what we're expecting from Daniel individually for him to be able to do, and what we're expecting individually is pretty simple. We're expecting him to, no matter what, take possession, because in order to score in Rocket League, you need the ball, so it doesn't make sense to give it away just to try and get it back. Very basic concept. It may have taken EU a long time to get that, but pretty much after RLCSX, every region understood the importance of possession. There are some teams that don't understand it that much, but possession is a very important individual concept. And then our ability to read the play rather than react. There are a lot of players that play reactionary in Rocket League, and they do the decision-making off being able to react. But Rocket League is a physics-based game. If you see your opponents approach the ball at a certain angle, at a certain speed, at a certain elevation, you should be able to tell exactly where they're going to hit the ball, or if they're going to end up missing the ball. And it's a skill that does take a lot of time to practice. There are a couple of pros that aren't really good at reading the play, but they make up for it in a different way. For example, based on our previous analysis, Daniel and Atal were both players that had a lot of issues with reading the play, and instead played very reactionary. Now, based on what I've seen, it looks like Daniel has gotten a lot better at reading the play rather than reacting, but of course, we'll see that in the replays. Now, from a team perspective, just to keep it simple for everybody watching, from a team perspective, aka the team basics, we're going to be looking to see how well Daniel does the 3 necessary jobs to maximize pressure in Rocket League. How well does Daniel fill in the person on the ball without hesitation? Or does he hesitate? Does he not go right away? Does he give opponents space? Does he let the opponents fly through the air too long? Stuff like that. Overall, the ball guy's job is to either get possession or to keep possession. That's the main job, defense or offense. Then we'll see overall how well Daniel supports. So, of course, in Rocket League, since everybody in Rocket League goes the same speed, that means that in order to actually beat people to the ball, you got to physically be closer to the ball before it's hit. Because even a bronze who knows how to double jump aerial, mechanically speaking, is the same speed as a pro. Doesn't mean the bronze is going to hit the ball or is going to be able to go directly to the ball or anything like that. But in terms of potential, every player in Rocket League is able to go the same speed. So therefore, in order to actually outpace players to the ball, as second man, you got to physically be as close to your first man as you can be while maintaining momentum to make sure that you can get to the ball before the opponent's second man. So overall, Daniel did have issues with this when we looked at G2 as a team. And then lastly, how well does Daniel apply off-ball pressure? Because if first man and second man handle everything on the ball, that means we need somebody to maximize pressure off the ball. Because what is pressure? It's our ability to take and maintain space and possession on the opponent's end of the field. Our first man and second man do everything to push the ball forward, and then we have the third man who, on the ball, doesn't really have a job. So his job more so is to go forward and take space, to become an option on the blindside pass after he rotates through. On defense, look for demos. On offense, look for demos and boost steals. And overall, do stuff to push the opponents out of where they need to be. Does that mean that the third man can't help on the ball? They can, but normally they're going to be sitting there doing nothing until your first man loses a 50 to another person or anything like that. So generally, just overall trying to maximize pressure from an efficiency perspective. But overall, enough talk. Let's get into the replay review. As I said, we're going to be looking at Game 2 versus Falcons in the group stage. Now, Falcons, according to most people, look the strongest going into coming into the group stage and out of it. Vitality did well. I wouldn't say they had the strongest strength of schedule. Actually, I might be misremembering. Vitality played... Yeah, Chiefs, Gen G, Furia. Of course, Furia on paper, very strong team. Gen G did take them to Game 5, so never mind. Vitality did have a pretty strong strength of schedule. They did start with Chiefs, but outside of that, Gen G did well, Furia did well. But Falcons literally played against SSG, Game 5, BDS, who actually looked good compared to the quarterfinals, and then, of course, G2, who became the major winners, who beat Falcons in that grand final. So overall, it should be fun to see how well this match ends up going. And what's cool about doing these individual deep dive analysis is we can just look at Daniel the whole time. So let's see overall how well does Daniel do for his team. We're going to look at strengths, we're going to look at weaknesses, and overall see what we're going to do. So right off the bat, we see that kickoff wise, we can see that Daniel ends up going all the way back for big boost. So we do see an issue pretty much right off the bat here from Daniel. So normally, since the other team has possession, it's not a bad idea to get boost a lot of the time, but it is inefficient from a team pressure perspective. And we know G2 as a whole, ever since they were ever since they were JNAP Chicago Atomic, they've always been one of the best teams when it came to from a rotational perspective. So we can actually go above the ball here right off the kickoff. So remember, Rocket League is a 5-minute game, and we just talked about and something important to understand for high level Rocket League is what does it actually take to win in Rocket League? Well, in order to win, the first answer is pretty simple. You got to score more than the other team, right? But then the next problem becomes a bit more of a question. What concept, if maximizes scoring more than the other team? And that concept is pressure. We got to put more pressure than the other team in order to score. We learned from when we analyzed M80 that it's not just enough to make one perfect play. You can't just make one perfect play and hope it to work. Because if the offense does one perfect play, what can the defense do? The defense can do one perfect play. So that's why it's more about, instead of trying to get that one perfect play to work, which still has a chance to be saved, it's about getting as good as possible plays consecutively in a row until human nature takes over and we eventually see the other team fail. That's essentially the idea here. You want to out-pressure the other team. And in order to maximize pressure, the way we do this is by ensuring that all 3 jobs on the pitch are filled in as much as possible. So we want to see always have somebody on the ball applying pressure, trying to get or keep possession. We want to see somebody supporting as close as possible to make sure that the ball guy has options, but also to make sure that after that first man takes the 50 or makes a pass, you want to be the first person on that ball to make sure we can keep that pressure going. And that third man's job is literally to do everything off the ball. Now, we do know that a flow to the rotation is important to keep, but in general, what can you do off the ball? Boost steals, demos, be a blindside pass, be an outlet pass, cover midfield space. You can cut rotations. Overall, your job is to be as useful to the play by staying close to the play and looking for things to do off the ball and generally be a nuisance to the other team. Pressure by presence is a very important part of third man. And we can see right off the bat, now don't get me wrong, this could be an intentional thing by G2 where no matter what, off the kickoff, if the ball goes to their end of the pitch, maybe G2's idea is just to grab boost. So instead of doing what's best for pressure, they just all try to grab boost right off the kickoff to try and make sure that they're able to start. So it's kind of giving up space for a little bit. But we have to remember, if it's best for our team to maximize pressure, it means it's also best for the other team to maximize pressure. So by giving your opponents the ball and time and space, we're inherently making it easier for the opponents to score, which is a bad thing. Now, G2 might be individually confident enough to where this little thing is fine, which case, that's up to them. But overall, it is a bit of a bad sign to see in the first second of the game, we see our second man, instead of supporting Atomic, going back for a big boost and leaving a big gap between the first and second man. Because we see Beast Mode, he doesn't cut to fill in second or anything either. He goes back for the big boost. Now, this is a Daniel replay, so we're going to be looking at Daniel to see if the second man issue persists. But overall, Let's see how this replay ends up going. We're not even 1 second in the replay, and we're already seeing an issue. Because we can see here, Daniel does opt to go for the big boost. Now, Atomic makes a really good challenge. But here's where, again, since Daniel didn't support close, there was no option for Daniel to go. Now, does supporting close mean that Daniel has to go? No, Daniel can still choose not to go for the ball, but the whole idea about supporting as close as possible is to make it so no matter what, you have the option to be the first person on the ball to maximize pressure. As we can see, Atomic gets a 50-50, and Clears is already in the air because of how far Daniel is away. So this was an opportunity where G2 could have kept pressure on the offensive end, but we lost it because of a positioning thing where our second man was so far back. So, but let's see how Daniel handles his first man. So even though Daniel did not support close, he understands the first man's job. Don't give the opponents time and space. Look at this here from Daniel. Instantly jumps, trying to force the play. Really solid from Daniel. And now he's in front of the ball. What we want to see him do is we want to see him be that third man role. We can see, is there any teammates in front of Daniel? No. That means both his teammates are covering the first and second man job after this 50-50. So now what we want to see from Daniel is how does he apply pressure to the opponents off the ball? There are a lot of teams that have issues where when the person gets in front of the ball, they become that third man, and they don't look for demos, they don't look for boost steals, they just rotate completely out of the play and grab a big boost, which means that the other team has a lot more space to try to apply pressure to the opponents. So let's see overall how Daniel does here. So we can see Daniel ends up rushing back. Now, luckily for Daniel, it doesn't hurt the team too much here, because even though Beast Mode doesn't connect on the challenge, Atomic supports well and is the first person on the ball, and Daniel just ends up being a good support player for Atomic. Now, of course, that's more so, this would be something in high-level Rocket League called confirmation bias. Daniel would rush back, he grabs a big boost, and he's able to support Atomic, so it obviously will feel good, because it seems like he did the right thing, but from an objective standpoint, we have Beast Mode on the ball. We have Atomic on the ball. I want to see a habit from Daniel here where he's trying to do stuff off the ball or at least grab pads and cover the midfield. So what I would prefer to see Daniel do here is after he gets that 50-50, cut out to the middle. There's no one really to demo here, so it's fine that he's not able to get a demo. There's nothing really useful he can do off the ball, but what he can do is grab pads and cover the midfield, take up space, which by definition, by us taking back space from the opponents, what that means is that we're relieving pressure. And if we're able to maximize relieving pressure and maximize pressure on offense, that's how we score more. That's how we end up winning. So as we can see, Daniel would then grab pads. He would see that Atomic's now going for the ball. So Daniel will probably do a little bit wider rotation to grab these pads and then make sure, based on whatever Atomic is doing, he would be, and then play that first touch. So maybe Daniel grabs these pads, he sees Atomic hitting that ball straight up, so then he would turn to grab pads and instantly fly for this ball, keeping the pressure going. Now, as we can see, Daniel in either situation, in this specific situation, is able to end up supporting and being that first person on the ball. The difference is if Falcons didn't mess up what they were doing, and Falcons were doing what's best for their own team, Daniel would have been in a horrible spot to help Atomic if he had gone for that big boost. Or if Beast Mode and Atomic both do their jobs, Daniel could be the reason that Falcons are able to find a pass in the midfield or find pressure in the midfield to get scoring opportunities. Now, this play didn't end up being bad due to Falcons messing up what they were trying to do, but this could be an issue like this could be the reason why Falcons end up scoring in the future. But here we go. Daniel ends up flying for it. Looks like it's a little bit of a misread on that part. And here he does actually push forward to go for a third man. He avoids a demo from Rawas. And it ends up being a goal. So as we can see, so don't get me wrong, from a team perspective, would anybody blame Daniel for this play? I'm sure he missed that ball there. But overall, we got two people back from G2. We have a first man. We have a second man. G2 should not be getting scored on in this situation. Now, it looks like Atomic doesn't support properly because he's on low boost. Beast Mode doesn't make a proper challenge. So G2 do end up getting outplayed individually in this situation. But since we're looking at Daniel, we're going to look at how do we make this Daniel's fault. So if we're coaching Daniel, how do we help Daniel improve in this play? So first of all, it all starts back here when he doesn't grab pads and go to the midfield. So overall, since he doesn't do his job as third man, he misses out on opportunities to help out his team. Now, he does end up supporting Atomic, As we can see, Daniel doesn't really go for the ball until after Atomic's hitting the ball. So Daniel is facing the play, which is really solid. But as we can see, he's still playing a little reactionary. And then we can see he ends up misreading this play here. So misread on not just what his teammate's doing, but a misread on a ceiling bounce as well. And that ends up being how G2 end up losing their ability to transition and apply pressure in the other team. And it's all due to a couple mistakes that Daniel did end up making. Now, of course, it's a team game. Even if one person makes a mistake, it takes all three players making a mistake for a team to score. And as we can see here, all three players on G2 do end up making a mistake, and that's why they do end up getting scored on. But what did Daniel do? He didn't do his job as third man initially. He didn't support as close and as fast as he could have. And then as an individual, he also misread the wall bounce and didn't hit the ball that he needed to. So overall, those are just a couple issues we saw from Daniel in this one play. But it's just a one-time thing. We got to see it happen one more time for us to really know this is a bad habit. To be honest, at the pro level, I would argue that even making one mistake at the pro level, even if doing a mistake once a game is a little too much at the pro level. But of course, this is at a major. There's a lot of pressure on the line. So generally, when it comes to major events, I tend to give players at least a little bit more leeway before I actually write it down as an actual weakness. But overall, let's see how Daniel does here. So Daniel, he does support close here. So that's something that Daniel has improved on. And I know G2 just got scored on. But overall, look at what Daniel does here. He's facing the play. He's supporting as close as possible to make sure that he has the opportunity to instantly go. Now, what happens again? It looks like Beast Mode has missed another first man challenge. It didn't really make it easy on Daniel. And as we can see, Daniel turns after the ball gets hit past his teammate. So Daniel, as we can see here, still isn't really reading the play as well as he needs to. He's playing a little reactionary. So he's not able to instantly go up for this ball. He's not able to prepare. But from a team standpoint, this is so much better than what we saw from Daniel at the second regional at the beginning of the season. At the beginning of the season, Daniel would have been a mile away from the play, and would have been a mile away from the play. And even if Beast Mode did make a good challenge, Daniel would probably get beat by Falcon's second man. But since Daniel is supporting close here, he's giving himself the best opportunity to get to the ball first. So overall, very strong stuff from Daniel going into this play. So now that we've looked at about a minute of gameplay, let's actually write down some notes. So of course, weakness-wise, Daniel has an issue where he still plays reactionary. I guess I can make the notepad a little bit bigger. Here we go. Where he still plays reactionary rather than reading where the ball is going ahead of time, and turns after the ball is hit in most situations. This leads to opponents who have players that can read rather than react beat Daniel to the ball. That's one big issue we're seeing from Daniel. This leads to opponent teams who have players that can read rather than react. This leads to opponent teams beating Daniel to the ball. There we go. So that is one issue we're still noticing from Daniel. But something that I can't put down as a strength just yet, but something we're going to keep in mind is now he's supporting close facing the play. Something that he had that he didn't do earlier in the season. So it does mean Daniel is improving, at least when it comes to his threes gameplay. So overall, that's really solid, but reading the play is still a weakness for Daniel. And don't get me wrong, that takes a lot of time to improve, but overall, he's still looking better. And normally, as we can see here, Daniel ended up getting scored on, even though he supported properly. But that's why it's super important when you guys are analyzing your own gameplay to really look objectively at your gameplay. Figure out what is the exact problem. The problem here for Daniel wasn't that he supported close. He maintained his momentum. He's closer to Beast Mode and TRK than the opponent's second man. So that means if Daniel reads where this force is going to go, Daniel would have been the first person on the ball. So overall, from a second man point, perfect. But from an individual perspective, Daniel doesn't read what's happening. He doesn't read that TRK gets it over beast mode. He doesn't read beast mode gets the bump. So since Daniel doesn't read the play and he's playing reactionary here, he's not able to go up for this ball in time, and that ends up with leading Rawas to being able to out 50 him and get the goal. It's super important to know what's the actual problem you had when you're looking at your own gameplays. Looking at your own gameplay. So we can see here again, Daniel looks like he messes up his possession a little bit. It looks like Daniel, when he's under pressure, his mechanics might fall off a little bit. We've seen it so many different times here, just in this first minute, where Daniel's not executing what he wants to do a lot of the time. We can see he's a little hesitant right now. Maybe not playing to win, maybe afraid of losing. And that's a mindset a lot of NA teams have, where they're so worried about missing the ball or mis-executing that they just don't go at all. And that's generally a really big issue when it comes to high-level gameplay, especially with a lot of North American teams. A couple Oceania teams has this issue as well, where players don't play to win. They don't just say, hey, I'm just going to try to do the right thing without hesitation. If I miss, I miss. Generally, you can think, like, a lot of EU players have that type of mindset, where even if they miss, since they go without hesitation, they're still maximizing the pressure they can apply to the other team. And we can see with Daniel, across this whole first minute, he's had issues where he's hesitated, just not gone where he's needed to, and that could be attributed to that mindset. Now, of course, it's not something tangible, but it is something that we can talk about and something that we can relate to. But now, let's see how Daniel handles his support. So here, this is perfect. Let's see what he does here. He goes for a double tap, so doesn't really look at where the opponents are. So a little bit of an awareness issue here. Daniel had a lot of time here to look at where the opponents were. And this is a very important strength as a first man that most players do end up needing to have. Your ability to recognize where the opponents are. So Rawas is challenging here, but Daniel's clearly getting to this ball first. So Rawas isn't really an issue. So it's more so looking at where are the opponents. TRK is going to be covering everything on the ground here, and our far ground here, and Clears is covering everything far in the air here. So Daniel, in order to make the best play possible, his first man has to look at where the open space is. And the open space is actually close to Daniel in the air right here. Not far, far is towards the backboard, but close here in the air is something that we would want to see Daniel taking this ball to and controlling it. But since Daniel didn't actively use his time to look at where the opponents were before he took possession, he made a guess at where the open space was, and it ended up just being a free giveaway of possession. So right now, it looks like Daniel's awareness is something that we're going to have to pay attention to. Awareness of where the opponents are going to be and where they currently are. So he knows that Rawas is probably up. That's probably why he goes for the fast play, but he doesn't look at what he can best do, and it ends up just being a giveaway of possession. And of course, in order to maximize pressure, what do you need? You need possession. Doesn't make sense to give away the ball just to try and get it back. But let's overall see how the rest of this play does end up continuing. So Daniel does go for the boost steal. So that's something that Daniel does recognize as third man. It's something that we can now put as a solid strength for Daniel. As third man, if Daniel is in front of the ball and his teammates are in good positions, he does go forward to steal boosts and apply pressure this way. Pressure this way off the ball. Now, what he doesn't do is he doesn't look for that we haven't seen him do is he's not looking for demos. And which means that Daniel is still rushing out as a third man, which means that he's not really doing the best job to help G2 maximize pressure. And as we can see here, not rotating down the middle, rotating down the sides, looking very much like very much like old NRG. And as you can see, like, it doesn't necessarily matter that Daniel is like awkward. Like, pros can be awkward and still do their jobs properly, but it's more so from an efficiency standpoint. Daniel physically isn't doing anything to help his team right now. Like, if we were to count how long Daniel is useless to the play here, like, he goes with his boost steal. This is the last useful thing he does. He's not going for the ball in this situation. He's not going to look for a demo. He's not covering space in the midfield. So overall, let's count how long he's useless. So from 347, let's see when the next time he's actually useful to the play. So he's awkward. He's still not actually able to support Atomic. So we're now reaching 10 seconds where he's not useful. And then here, Beast Mode, since Daniel isn't supporting properly, Beast Mode actually cuts to fill in second here. So again, we're more time where Daniel's still useless to the play. And then right here, Atomic cut to fill in support for Beast Mode here. And now, for the first time, Daniel is useful to the play. 20 seconds later, Daniel has found himself useful to the play. Now, this is me being extreme. This is me scrutinizing Daniel's gameplay heavily. Even if we go back all this time, even if I'm a little bit nicer, and I say about right here, he's supporting Atomic. I don't think he's actually supporting Atomic. He can't play Atomic. No matter what Atomic does here, Daniel can't play Atomic's touch. But even if I'm just being nice and saying, hey, he's supporting close here, that is still 8 seconds where Daniel has been useless to his team. And to put that into perspective for you guys, when it comes to 8 seconds, so there's 5 minutes in Rocket League times 60 seconds, so there's 300 seconds, right? So 8 seconds divided by 300, this is the percentage of how long Daniel is useful to the play. Daniel was useless to the play for almost 3% of the game. That's how short Rocket League games are. Being useless for 8 seconds one time, you already wasted 3% of the game where you could have done something to help your team or give a chance to help your team. And this is something very important to recognize in Rocket League. And that's the thing. We're only a minute into the game. If Daniel did this thing one time, it's going to happen again. Which means he's probably going to have another moment where he's completely useless to the play. And that adds up over time, especially across an entire series. And that's something that's super important to understand when analyzing pro gameplay, is that pros are very good at the game. Obviously, even though Daniel has a lot of these issues, what's something that we can put down without even looking at the game? Daniel is one of the most mechanical players in the world and can use his mechanics and speed to transition quickly and create great scoring opportunities for his team. That's something we can put down for Daniel right away. Obviously, Daniel makes up for his weaknesses enough to where they can still win a major. But players and teams are only going to continue to get better and better, reach that pinnacle of Rocket League that we've all theorized about for over however many years, all right? So that's something that we do have to keep in mind when it comes to Daniel, is that he's still having moments on his team where he's completely useless to the play. So here's where you probably ask, Luke, what would you do as third man here, assuming you got Daniel's mechs and experience? So right here, of course, we talk about as first man. He didn't do the best play here. So right here, the ball's already hit past him. So now this is something that actually TRK does. TRK will actually pause right here on the opponent's backboard and actively look at where everyone is around him to see what is actually the most useful thing that Daniel can do here. And the most useful thing that Daniel could probably do right here, he sees that he would see Atomics going for the ball. He sees Beast Mode supporting. Daniel can't really go for the demos on these people and be useful. So my thought process, okay, go for the boost steal, demo TRK, and give a passing option right here. Give a blindside pass, because where's everyone's ball cam on the other team going to be facing? They're going to be facing the ball, of course. So they're not going to see Daniel even if they know that Daniel's there. So that's pressure by presence being a blindside passing opportunity. This would be applying pressure to the opponent. So look how much space G2 would be covering if Daniel did that. But instead, all Daniel does is get this boost steal, which is pressure, but he grabs the boost and then rushes out down this post. So he's not staying close to the play. He's not giving an opportunity. So G2 are the only actual space that G2 are covering are what Atomic and Beast Mode are doing right here, when Daniel himself is just rushing out. So this goes to show that there's still a lot of issues within high-level Rocket League that you can notice with pros. But here we go. Looking back to Daniel here. We see, and then, even if Daniel doesn't turn here, so Atomic ended up giving away the ball, right? But even in this situation, initially going up the wall here to see if, obviously, a misread from Daniel. He doesn't read where Roas's touch is going to go. But now you're asking, okay, look, well, what can Daniel do here? Well, what space can he cover? Because let's ask ourselves, who on G2 are filling in the jobs? Well, Beast Mode's first man, Atomic's filling in second man. So now, in order to cover as much space as possible to maximize G2's ability to relieve pressure, Daniel should cut down the middle and cover space here. If someone on Falcons ends up going near him, demo him. But even if he doesn't get a demo opportunity, watch mid, take up space, be available for his teammates. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to do something useful by going middle here, but it does maximize your chances to be useful. It does maximize your opportunities, and that's the importance here of going mid for Daniel. But instead, what he ends up doing is he ends up rushing back, and if we're being if we scrutinize Daniel heavily, we're just going to see another 10 seconds here where Daniel doesn't support Atomic. Look, Atomic's already pushing forward, and Daniel is a mile away from the play as second man. And then, right here, Beast Mode is first man. Daniel doesn't read the play, so Daniel's awkward again. And then Beast Mode fills in first. Daniel should be second here for Beast Mode. Luckily, the ball does get hit up to Atomic here, so Daniel doesn't have to fly for this or anything like that. But even after Atomic goes for this ball, Daniel doesn't read where that 50/hit's going to go, and he ends up being awkward, so he's not able to take possession, and pressure is still being maintained by Falcons. Rocket League doesn't have very many variables. The smart side of Rocket League isn't that complicated if you actually think about it. There's probably more variables in one round of Valorant, one round of CS, 5 minutes of a league match, than there is an entire game of Rocket League. So just because of how little variables there are, it's not that complicated of a game. If I were to sit down here and explain to you guys what rotations are, even from a theoretical perspective, or asking what's expected of the individual, from a smarts perspective, things aren't that complicated. It's more so, how much do these players get into their subconscious before the game starts? How much mentally are they able to prepare? Because as I said at the very beginning of this, Furia, on paper, are probably one of the best teams, if not the best team, skill-wise, individually and as a team on paper. But they have a lot of issues with mental that hurt them from being able to maintain that consistency throughout an entire tournament. And yet they can still get top 4 because, as I said, they're the best team. They're one of the best teams on paper. But overall, we can definitely see that Daniel, I think Daniel's issue is he rushes back as third man. I think Daniel doesn't understand the necessity of third man, and that's what's putting him in awkward situations. So overall, that's going to put this a weakness down for Daniel. Daniel has an issue with understanding the necessity of the third man role, and rushes back rather than doing his job. This leads to G2 not being able to maximize pressure on offense and hurts the team's ability to relieve pressure on defense. And that's the simplest way we can put it. This rushing from position. I guess we can make this a separate issue. Daniel also rushes from position to position quickly, which means he is generally awkward or misses out on opportunities to help out his team and maximize pressure. So those are a couple things he knows. Something we also notice from Daniel is Daniel's awareness of where opponents are is also something that's not very good. Daniel's awareness of where the opponents are on the field is also subpar. Due to this, he is not able to make the best decisions possible in any of the 3 necessary jobs: on ball, support, and off ball. There we go. But something we can do is that when Daniel does have information, his decision making is good. For example, earlier in the game, we saw a situation where Daniel knew he was set command for beast mode. He knew the midfield was open, and he gave beast mode a fantastic opportunity to pass it to him. He didn't use the information to do anything once he got the ball, but overall, his awareness when he does have information is great. And we can see here, Daniel is still forcing himself to support close. So overall, I'm going to put that as a strength. Daniel, even though he has issues with reading the play, forces himself to support as close as possible, facing the play. Forces himself to support as close as possible, facing the play. This ensures that he is the first person to the ball after his teammate does something, maximizing pressure. So as we can see, like, Daniel does have a decent amount of individual weaknesses, but he also has a lot of strengths as well. And this is what's crazy. Like, imagine if Daniel didn't rush back as third man. Think about how much G2 as a team would improve from that, right? Or think about from an individual perspective. If Daniel just got a little bit better at reading where the ball is going ahead of time. Where, like, of course, there are certain reads in Rocket League which are very, very hard, which I would say maybe in a tournament setting, no one would read. But even the little things, if Daniel just read little things more, like, better, like where a 50 is going, where a pass is going a little bit sooner, where an opponent's hitting the ball a little bit sooner, just a little bit of improvement in those areas would make Daniel a vastly better player. And that's what the series is for. At the end of the day, I don't expect necessarily pros to search up their own name or to watch someone else scrutinize them if they're not their own coach. But overall, this is for everyone else. This is for people who just like analyzing Rocket League. This series is for commentators who want to know just a little bit more about the highest level of the game. Even upcoming coaches or coaches that want to reference something. Like, that's what this series ends up being for, and I can't wait to keep doing more teams. But also, now that we've started the individual side of things, I can't wait to keep analyzing the individual gameplay of teams. Oh my goodness, we're at 48 minutes. We're at 48 minutes of analysis on this one replay. But normally, that's how this goes, right? The first replay that we look at, we end up scrutinizing and talking a lot. Because after the first series, as a tournament goes on, teams generally get more and more nervous, right? So are they going to make more of the same mistakes or more new mistakes? More of the same mistakes. At the end of the day, if you've mastered a skill, you're not going to forget how to do it no matter how nervous you are. For example, even if on your most nervous day ever, you're not going to forget how to walk, for example, right? These pros have mastered a lot of skills, so they're not going to mess up on the skills that they've already mastered. But the stuff they haven't mastered, the more and more nervous they get, the more and more we're going to see those mistakes, even if the players are working on them. And of course, if a team somehow gets more confident, we're going to see less and less of those mistakes that they haven't mastered as well. So it kind of goes in both directions. But generally, that's why as we go throughout a replay, the same mistakes are going to happen, no matter what. It's just how much are those mistakes happening changes. And normally when I'm doing this analysis, I kind of just go off and just talk and talk and talk. But anybody in the Twitch chat, if you guys ever have any questions or anything you guys think that you're noticing from Daniel and what they're doing, feel free to mention in chat. I'm always here to ask more questions. That's the thing. I don't know what a lot of people are really looking for with these deep dive analysis. I like reading the comments on the YouTube videos after because it gives me a lot. But anybody in Twitch chat, and if you guys ever see anything or have an idea, feel free to mention it. See how Daniel handles his possession here. So Daniel does take the ball to open space. Doesn't have the best controlled first touch there, though. Let's see, does Daniel... Yep, Daniel turns and supports. As we can see, Daniel, he's turning after the ball's being hit still, so he is playing reactionary, but he is trying to support as close as possible. So has Daniel improved from the beginning of the season? Vastly. Daniel has improved a ton from the beginning of the season. And Flaming, I'll do that after the stream. Well, not after the stream, but after the analysis. But overall, has Daniel improved? Yes, Daniel has improved vastly from the very first time we analyzed him and his team. But is there still a lot of issues? Yes. There yes, there are still a lot of issues when it comes to that. But overall, let's continue on and see another replay. So of course, Falcons was probably G2's team. As we saw, Beast Mode, a lot of issues in that series as well. But let's see overall, how does G2 perform against another team? So I would look at G2 Gen G, but I think it's time we look at, let's look at an actual playoff match now. Let's see. People in chat, what do we think? Do we want to look at SSG? Do we want to look at Furia? We can look at both of them, but I'm trying to see if we do have a preference. Because SSG versus G2, very cool, very important match. Where G2 do end up performing pretty well. Want to just go straight to Furia? Yeah, because I think SSG played pretty well this entire major, but Furia are definitely the stronger team on paper, so let's do that. All right, Furia versus G2. Let's see. Has Daniel improved on the off-ball pressure side of things? Does he have a positive demo ratio? Let's see. Daniel has a positive demo ratio, so maybe Daniel's gotten a lot more confident, and Sath, you told him to focus on demos or something like that. Look at this demo ratio. He went from, I think, the demo ratio he had in the previous series was he had 0.67 demos a game, and he got demoed once a game. And this time, we're seeing he's gotten almost 2 demos a game, and he's only been demoed half a demo a game. So that's honestly pretty cool. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Daniel has mastered any of this, but it does mean that he was at least focusing on it on the day, and that's some pretty good coaching from Sathi if that's what ended up happening, or maybe Daniel noticed it on his own, a player. His average boost looks like Daniel's still stealing a ton of pads. His small pad count could still be worked on, probably. So more than likely, Daniel's still rushing back his third man, more than likely. But all right, without further ado, let's look at one of these games. Let's look at a game where they won. Let's look at that game 5. It looks like Daniel's MVP in that one as well. So let's see. Hey Kilo, how you doing, homie? Welcome to the stream. And I'll do that after the actual analysis is over. All right, Aquadome. I don't think I've analyzed a game on Aquadome yet. But all right, so now we can pretty much sit back and just see where the issues are coming from. So a little bit of a kickoff issue about what it looks like here. Daniel ends up popping it high, so it does look like this might be intentional. Was Atomic fully ready for this? I do want to see, because I don't want to say it's a kickoff issue for Daniel and if it was intentional. I don't think it was intentional. Otherwise, Atomic would have probably instantly gone. So, never mind. Grinding, brother. How's you? I'm doing all right, homie. I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. Thanks for asking. All right. So let's see, Daniel. He gets a demo. Trying to support. Oh, let's Atomic cut. There we go. Let's see how Daniel supports here. Instantly goes his first man. I think now that we've seen it in 2 different games, we get to put that as a strength for Daniel. Daniel's defensive first man is perfect. So Daniel completely understands the job of first man on defense and does not give his opponents time or space. Daniel instantly jumps for the ball to maximize pressure on the ball. So his reads still aren't the best. As we can see, does Daniel actually make connection with this read? No, he doesn't read the play super well. You can see he's even feathering because he doesn't know what Yan's going to do here. But he still gets the force, and that's something that's super important. This is something that all of you NA players out there that are grinding 2s, that aren't doing this. I know 1600s in NA that are actually challenging better when it comes to aerial stuff than a lot of even SSLs are currently. You gotta force high. It doesn't make sense to give your opponents time and space. Challenge them. If your teammate doesn't support you, they don't support you. That just means that you, when you challenge, have to make an even better challenge as the first man. Don't put the blame on your teammates. The only person you can control is yourself. Solid. Pass down. Daniel supporting close. Goes for demos. Perfect. As we can tell, Daniel still hesitates as third man and still rushes a little bit. So I can't put it down as a strength. It still is going to be a weakness as part of Daniel's gameplay. But it's important that Daniel can work on something that his coach tells him to do. Or that the team discusses. Or maybe that he tells himself to work on. That's why Daniel's improved so much from the first and second qualifier this season to the second major. When Daniel wants to work on something, he works on it and improves at it really quickly. And that's a very important strength as a player. And something that we can actually put down as a strength. This is a tangible strength. We can see he didn't do it in the first replay, and he's doing it later in the tournament. So we can say, Daniel, when told by himself or others to work on something, focuses and improves on it even in tournament very quickly. So of course this is something that's more something like that is a little bit more subjective. So it's something that I can't really put down. Like if I had a stat sheet, I can't necessarily put improves quicker than other people, but it's something that we can take note of. This is an analysis at the end of the day. We look at all the variables that we have in front of us and analyze what are our thoughts on what's happening in this gameplay. But we can already tell that Daniel is looking far more confident. We still see some rushing out as third man, but we can see he looks so much more confident. And we can see now that Daniel's looking confident, his mechanics and his ability to maintain possession look so much better here. Like, look at this gameplay from Daniel. This does not look like nervous gameplay. And he gets a perfect pass, goes for a demo as well. This is the G2 that we want to see 24/7. If Daniel plays like this at Worlds, and Beast Mode and Atomic play anywhere near as good as they normally do, G2 are the team to beat. And we do see a rush back here for Big Boost, and he's still rushing for Big Boost. So I think we do, I haven't written it down yet, but Daniel has a boost. Well, his boost management's fine. Has a boost pathing issue where he focuses on Big Boost and does not stay close to the play. This means that when Atomic and Beast Mode do not do their jobs perfectly, G2 will lose pressure as Daniel is not in his job, is not doing his job and is grabbing boost. This is actually an issue that all of Gen G have. I didn't make a YouTube video out of it. The VOD's still on my Twitch channel, but I did analyze Gen G and all three players. It seems like it's actually a team issue, where all of Gen G just rush back for Big Boost. Like all three of them rush back for Big Boost when they shouldn't. But one thing we can take note of with Daniel's boost is his management's really solid. Look, he's only used 20 boost and did a ton of work for his team. Still save 4 boost afterwards. I think we can put boost management as a big strength for Daniel. Daniel's ability to maintain his boost amount and use and efficiently use it means that Daniel will generally always have boost and be able to conserve it. No. Has ability to make... Daniel has a great ability to maintain boost and manage it efficiently. This ensures that even when when in position, even on low boost, he is able to still do his job. So there we go. Job and maximize pressure, and therefore maximize pressure. There we go. A lot of strengths for Daniel. Because obviously, Daniel is a major winner. Daniel is a 2-time LAN winner. He's a 1-time major winner. A 2-time major grand finalist. He's made top 3 with another team. He's a very good player. And that's one thing that I don't want people to misconstrue whenever I am criticizing Daniel. Like, when I'm criticizing Daniel, I'm comparing him to what theoretical perfect Rocket League is. And when I say perfect Rocket League, I don't mean perfect in the sense of if human beings are perfect. When I say perfect Rocket League, I mean I'm taking into account that human beings aren't perfect. The theoretical perfect Rocket League in a non-perfect world, compared to that, Daniel still has a long way to go. Daniel, even compared to other pros, still has a long way to go. For example, Daniel may be better mechanically than TRK, but TRK is better than Daniel in pretty much every other aspect. But Daniel is still good at a lot of other aspects, so his mechanics can still make him hang with TRK. Whereas TRK, if he doesn't keep improving his mechanics, TRK may eventually get to a situation where he's not able to do enough to help carry his team to a victory. He's more so a pawn that his team uses to maximize pressure. By the end of the day, 3 individual players that are all rotationally and team-wise doing their job will always be better than a team that has 2 great players and 1 player filling in roles. But at the end of the day, Rocket League is it's a very hard esport. It's very fast-paced. Unlike esports such as Valorant or CS or League, which are all still very fast-paced games, you still get a lot of downtime to think and to process things. Even individually in those games, you get a lot of downtime to think. Or a lot of the stuff that you get to do is pretty straightforward. In Rocket League, it's straightforward, but there is a lot of critical thinking you have to do in the moment. There's a lot of remembering, there's a lot of awareness that you have to have, there's a lot of thought process, which makes Rocket League such a hard game from an individual mechanical standpoint. So no one blames these pros for not being perfect, but it is always about how well do these teams prepare. For example, something I know for a fact, based on Daniel's ability to support close now, is that whenever G2 are scrimming, or whenever they're in replay review, Stathu and the team probably put a massive focus on supporting close and facing the play. Which means that since Daniel's practicing that constantly in scrims, even though at the beginning of the season Daniel had an issue, we can see even on LAN when he's most nervous, Daniel's still supporting close facing the play. So overall, it means that G2 are in a really good, know how to improve. And whether that be on Sathu or the team as a whole, great. I personally, based on what I've heard Sathu talk about, I think he's a great coach based on what I've heard. So hopefully we get to see him continue to do well at G2. Hopefully they do get that Worlds win. I'm a G2 fan. I'll just put it out there. But as a coach, I hate watching bad gameplay. Like, Daniel was a player where in previous seasons, mechanically I liked watching him, but from a coaching perspective, I really didn't like watching him. But nowadays, I actually really enjoy watching. Nowadays, Daniel's gameplay is actually a lot more enjoyable to watch because he is supporting close. He still doesn't know how to read the play. He still has some issues, but overall, Daniel has improved. I think earlier this season, he had more weaknesses than strengths, and now he's roughly equal, or the strengths outweigh the weaknesses in terms of importance, and that's why Daniel is still such a good player. But overall, now that we're done with that, let's just look at one grand final match just to see how well Daniel does in that grand final. I think we look at that game 1 where the pressure is on G2 the most. So we got 1 push-up and 2 squats to do after. Alright. Here we go. Daniel supports. Lets Atomic go. A little awkward for G2 again. 500, no, it's not. You gotta watch. Well, the idea, hopefully, is that a lot of viewers do it all at once, you know? It's like a hype train. But instead of hype, I get to exercise. It's great. But alright. So Daniel, as we can see, he's actually staying closer to the play. So again, Daniel looking like he's even improving from that Furia match. So Daniel, he's trying to support. He's trying to force himself to face the play. He goes, tries to take possession, gets a bump. Such a good play there from Daniel. Now, Beast Mode's not able to score. We do see Daniel's rushing back, not in the most efficient way. Something I think we have to address, though, is something I talked about a little bit. Due to Daniel's rushing back as third man, he hurts the flow of the team and slows down his teammates, which shortens the space that the team can cover, as slower cars means less coverage. Less coverage, by definition, means that we are not maximizing pressure on offense and minimizing pressure on defense, which inherently hurts our ability to win. There we go. Another situation where Daniel's rotating down the front post. Now, he does read the play really well here. Look, Daniel mechanically looked better and better each day of the tournament. So, good stuff from Daniel. Here he supports. He actually turns before the ball's hit, so he actually does read the play there. Now, one time reading the play doesn't outdo all the other times where he doesn't read the play, but just that little bit more quickness, that ability to turn to face the play sooner, just that will make G2 that much more threatening of a team. Here we go. Daniel, see, he's focusing on the big boost, so again, boost pathing, not the most efficient. But when Daniel does have boost, he generally knows how to do his job. But alright. Thank you to everybody who showed up to the deep dive analysis. Overall, how long has it been? It's been an hour, 10 minutes. So I think honestly, that's not too bad. I think as one little special thing, I think what we'll do is we'll look at 1-2's replay from Daniel, just to see how well does Daniel improve outside of a term, because this is the tournament setting. Something that I want to use this individual series as well is to see how much do pros actually improve. I made a tweet earlier today, or I made a comment on I think Scribbles' tweet. I said, looking at a lot of NA pros and 2's replays and on stream, it looks like NA pros don't do what's necessary to win. They don't do what's necessary, or they don't do what's necessary to improve, excuse me. They just try to be as comfortable as possible. They just try to put their hours in. They try to keep warmed up. That's what it looks like whenever when I look at a lot of NA pros play 2's a lot of the time. When in reality, in order to improve, you have to be uncomfortable. Look at this from Daniel, something he didn't do in either of the replays, either the previous replays, when we looked at the previous Falcon series and the Furia series. As third man on defense, he's up. Look at that, and look how much time and space he opens up for his team to relieve pressure. And look, G2 end up getting the ball and get a counterattack going and almost get a goal here. All off of that little bit of off-ball pressure as third man. Perfect stuff. So here, Daniel, maintaining possession. Now, let's see what Daniel does here. Looks like he doesn't read the play early enough, but he still gets possession due to Clears' misplay. Great possession from Daniel. Even better, 50-50. No one on his team follows it up. not the worst thing in the world. Atomic's forcing. Daniel does read the play. He just gets bumped, and he didn't have as much boost as he could have had either. Well, you have 12k points? Oh, boy. There you go. Good force. Daniel supporting. Love this play. And this is a game that G2 lost, but as we can see, even in a game where G2 lost, they're playing well. And honestly, Falcons don't look like they're doing the same stuff that they were doing that maximized winning when they originally played G2. So not only is G2 playing way better, the Falcons are also not playing as good. But Falcons, I mean, anybody who's anybody has had an experience where you played against players way lower ranked than you, and just for some reason you couldn't score and you ended up losing one game. Everybody's had that. There's been rank X teams that have lost to rank B teams in RLCS. There's SSLs that lose to GC2s on a rare occasion. Everybody loses at some point. What matters is, are you maximizing your chances at winning? And as we can tell from this gameplay, G2 might have lost this game, but G2 are playing, on paper, far better than Falcons. So if G2 managed to keep the confidence they're playing with in this game one, they'll end up winning the series. That's how I felt when I was watching it live anyway. And they ended up winning 4-1. There we go. Daniel tries to read the play. Obviously, still has some issues, but overall, really solid stuff. But as a special add-on to this, let's look at a Daniel 2's replay. Or let's see if we can find one anyway. Daniel, limit to pro players, rank 2's. Let's see. Can we find a Daniel replay? That's not Daniel. So we'll probably have to find an actual... Okay, so we'll actually have to probably search up Daniel. Actually, this might just be a good replay as a whole, right here. But anyway, appears in 7,000 replays. Let's see. Daniel Atomic versus Hazo and Ga. Could be a good series. Daniel and Cam, 5-2. Yeah, let's look at this one. So here, Daniel, and to give you guys context, Ga, I don't remember where he peaked. I think he's been really high in 2s before. I think he's been rank A. I don't remember for sure. Hazo has made main events in NA RLCS. And of course, Atomic and Daniel are Atomic and Daniel. So let's see overall how Daniel does in 2s. And that's the thing about 2s. The only difference between 2s and 3s is you have one less person. But the importance of each job stays the same. So you can actually, in order for you to understand how 2s connects to high level 3s, what you can do is just pretend your third man is permanently stuck in front of you. And then have your first man, who's ball guy, and we have a second man. So if you are playing 3s, and let's say you lose the ball back to your teammate, and you know that in order of priority, the jobs are ball guy, support, and then off-ball pressure. Even though they're all necessary, they're still a priority. You'd rather have someone on the ball first, and then support, and then off-ball. Priority levels. For example, in 3s, if someone's dead, you want to make sure that first and second are filled in first. And if no one's on the ball, that's the most important thing. So 2s works the same kind of logic. So if you pretend your third man's in front of you and you just lost the 50 back to your teammate, that means if in 3s you see a teammate's in front of you, you'd fill in second because your teammate's applying off-ball pressure. Now in 2s, it's just a virtual third man. So that means in 2s, you want to make sure you fill in support, and by making sure there's always somebody on the ball and someone supporting, we're maximizing pressure. Now, a lot of NA players don't understand the importance of second man, because as I talked before about the whole M80 situation, you don't want to get one perfect play, because if you can get one perfect play, your opponents can get one perfect save, right? So it's about maximizing pressure. That's why even though if you're in a 2v1 in 2s and you're in front of the ball, I don't think it's a bad play to go for a demo. But from a pure pressure stand, like, I'm not going to get mad at you if you go for a demo. At the end of the day, it's 2-on-1. If you get the demo and your teammate does their job, it's a goal, right? So, but at the end of the day, your opponent can make the perfect demo avoidance and make the perfect challenge, make the perfect save, right? So generally, it's more important to keep consistent pressure by having second man choose support. Give your teammate a 50 option, a passing option, a backward option. That's so many more variables for your one opponent to pay attention to. That's why support is higher priority than off-ball pressure. It's still not a bad play to go for a demo. It's just overall, it's not the most efficient play. Just because human beings aren't perfect, and you gotta understand that. But overall, that's pretty much the only difference between 2s and 3s, is that in 2s, you can just automatically assume you're going to fill in support. Whereas in 3s, you actually have to look. Is there someone in front of you? Yes, fill in second. If someone isn't in front of you, fill in third. But of course, in 2s, someone's permanently in front of you. So there's my little 2s replay. There's my little 2s gameplay for the day. But let's see. Does Daniel actively try to do new things? Does Daniel try to work on the stuff that he needs to work on when he's playing 2s? Or does he not? So here you can see Daniel. He's trying to fill in space. You can see Daniel ends up forcing for atomic. Then you go into fill in support. Perfect. So far, perfect. Let's see. Does he go to support atomic even on low boost? Looks like he doesn't. So as we can see, even though Daniel in 3s is working on supporting close, he's not doing it in 2s. So, or at least, let's see let's see how long ago the replay was. I want to see how much I can really. This was literally 3 days ago. So yeah, I can scrutinize Daniel. Here is first man. He reads the play really well. He even gets a psycho pass upfield. That would have been a crazy goal. And we can see Daniel, he does go to force. It looks like he misreads where atomic is, but that is good. So because Daniel used to not be very good at challenging at all. So it looks like Daniel is trying to improve at challenging, but as we can see, he's not doing some things that are important. He's still doing some things that make him feel more comfortable. A lot of NA players in 2s, they're so good individually that they kind of go off stuff that's more comfortable. Where, for example, we can see Daniel sometimes doesn't support atomic close like he needs to. He's willfully putting himself in a 1v2. And don't get me wrong, a lot of NA players are so good when they have 100 boosts, so they go back for 100 boosts. They're so confident that they can make that 1v2 play. But statistically speaking, a 1v2 is never going to be as good as a 2v2 or a 2-on-1 for your own team, right? Logically, it doesn't make sense to get to leave to go for a big boost rather than supporting your teammate. And that's something that it looks like a lot of EU players understand pretty well, where they understand to support no matter what. But a lot of NA players, especially so not the top pro levels, not the top pro players. A lot of the top pro players are getting better, even though it's not perfect. But a lot of rank X players, especially by what I've seen in 6-mans, a lot of players don't understand the importance of 1, challenging as soon as possible, but 2, supporting. To the point where their first man might actually challenge when they need to, but since the second man is not supporting close, it just looks like your first man threw himself at the ball, when in reality, whoever wasn't supporting close is the reason why that first man's challenge was useless. And I've been complained to by a lot of players about issues within rank A to rank X a lot. Let's see. So as you can see, Daniel's still not supporting close. So we can see, like, Daniel is focusing on at least one thing. Like, he's still forcing himself to challenge as early as possible. And we can see when he gets the ball, he's actively trying to limit test himself. He's not afraid to go for things. He's not afraid of failure when he has the ball. But when he's second man, it looks like he's worried about that ball getting hit over his teammate's head. So that's why, except when he's forced to support close, like in this situation, he's not forcing himself to do that. So there is still, like, an obvious attempt at improvement. It's just, for example, if we were to look at another game, or if we were to look at, say, like Zen gameplay, you can see Zen's constantly trying to get himself to improve, whether it be mechanically, smart-wise, anything like that. Whereas you can see with this gameplay, Daniel is forcing himself to challenge the ball as first man pretty early, but he's not focusing on playing second man properly, even though he has improved at that in 3s. You can tell he does it in 3s because he understands the importance in 3s, but he doesn't understand the importance of understanding from an individual perspective how to master those things. And that's something that it would be up to probably a coach or another player on Daniel's team to really call him out for that. Like, hey, you need to play 2s to improve. But speaking of Daniel, let's actually look. Let's see, how many games of 2s does Daniel actually have this season? That would be something that would be pretty interesting to look at. Let's see, Steam. let's see. Daniel doesn't really have a lot of twos games this season, so maybe since it's a lot of time between now and Worlds, or between the last major and Worlds, maybe he hasn't been grinding as much. But hopefully he gets that number up. He used to have way higher numbers, by what I remember. So hopefully we see Daniel get back in that grind right before Worlds at the very minimum. But that's why, like, people in NA, like these pros, a lot of NA pros aren't grinding the way they need to. So if there's any time to catch up to the current pro skill level, a time would be now. Grind twos, put in the work, get replay review. I'm not even saying with an actual coach. Just find 2 other players that you love grinding with that want to improve just as much as you, and just go for it. Improve as much as you can. And then if you can afford coaching, get coaching. And here's where I'm going to put a little self promo for myself. I do coaching for about $20 for 1 session, $30 for 3 sessions. Just hit me up on Discord, hit me up on Twitter, and just let me know. Hello, LKO. How you doing, homie? Welcome to the stream. Yeah, you got here pretty much towards the tail end of the stream. We're just doing a 2v2 replay just to look at stuff. We can see Daniel. Looks like he's forcing himself to improve mechanic. What a last touch, though. Solid last touch. More so just to add on, but overall, just as more of a bonus to the overall analysis. Here we go. Guh, looking for a goal. Solid from Guh. And looks like we have a kickoff goal here. I do remember the name. I do not remember from where, though, so I do apologize. I remember seeing the name. So, I don't know. So, you could be one of those people that troll me and just say, oh, do you remember me? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember the name, but we never actually talked. But I doubt it. Your name does look very familiar to me. Having fun. Was that Hashi's team? Like that. I know a team name that's called Having Fun, so that's what I'm thinking of. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I do remember then. Cool stuff. Here we go. Daniel looks like he's fake challenge. So we can see there still is some hesitation, but like that's the thing. Like a lot of NA players need to work on actually learning how to challenge. So something I'm having actually a lot of my players from around 1700 to even 2100 do, as I'm telling them, no matter what, you're not allowed. No fake challenging allowed, pretty much. Because think about it like this. Like analogy I like to use is imagine somebody has mastered learning how to use addition, for example, right? They can do any math problem with addition. They're the master of addition, but they know nothing about multiplication. Would they be able to tell me when would it be best to use addition versus multiplication? No, because they've only mastered one of them. Fake challenging is really easy to understand. Almost everybody in North America knows how to fake challenge, but a lot of players don't know how to challenge as quickly as possible and still get the ball. Right? So what I'm having a lot of players do is, in order to improve, force yourself to say, I'm not allowed to fake challenge whenever I play ranked. Challenge everything as soon as possible. No fake challenging allowed, and just learn how to challenge. And then once you master how to challenge, and you've already mastered fake challenging, once you master both of them, then you can work on when is it best to fake challenge versus challenge. And frankly, a lot of NA pros still don't know how to properly challenge. So in this situation, I would have loved to see what Daniel could have done if he had just insta-challenged. Now, is it going to make Daniel feel comfortable? No. But when has anybody ever said that improving should be comfortable? If anything, improving should be uncomfortable because you haven't mastered it yet. Once you master something, that's when you should be comfortable. But overall, let's see. How does G2 end up scoring here? Daniel takes possession. Messes up his first touch a little bit. Ends up forcing. Atomic forces. Daniel takes possession. Ends up faking it. So, good smarts here. What does he do here? Pre-flips it over one. Tries to 50 the second one. Not the best 50. You can see Daniel still rotates off for big boost, just like he does in threes, so he's not working on staying close and grabbing pads in twos. But Daniel does support close here. Does get to the ball. Hazo reads it as well. But I was going to say Guh and Hazo aren't playing poorly either, but they probably have very similar issues to Daniel. Overall, solid stuff. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of our deep dive analysis on the player of Daniel. So overall, what are my closing thoughts on Daniel? My closing thoughts are Daniel is an extremely strong player. So even though I have more weaknesses than strengths here for Daniel, the strengths themselves are far more important than the weaknesses in this situation. Now, there are some players who have weaknesses that really hurt the team's ability to win. Obviously, Daniel won a major, so his strengths are enough to be with his team and win. All right. As you can see, Daniel still has a lot of Rocket League that he can improve and work on at the end of the day. So overall, what's the summary of Daniel's issues? Daniel's issues are he still plays very reactionary. He rushes back as third man. He's not super aware of where his opponents are, and if you don't have information, you can't make the best decisions possible. And overall, he also has an issue where he doesn't fill in his job or stay close to the play, which means that G2 aren't able to maximize pressure. And if G2 aren't maximizing pressure, they're not maximizing goals, and therefore they are not winning. Now, generally, G2 are good enough to where even if Daniel does have some issues, he makes up for it in other ways due to all his strengths. And G2 as a team are very strong fundamentally. So, and then what is the summary of Daniel's strengths? Mechanically, one of the best players in the world. Give him the ball and information, he'll know what to do with it. Even though he's bad at boost pathing, his management's very, very solid. He is forcing himself to support close now. He does steal boosts, even if he does rush out as a third man as a whole. But as we can see, Daniel individually has a lot of issues that he still needs to work on, but he's strong enough currently to allow G2 to win Worlds if Beast Mode and Atomic play even near what their average is. So overall, can't wait to see what Daniel does at World. But thank you, YouTube, for watching today's episode. And I hope to see you guys all in the next video or the next stream where hopefully we're going to be going over another player or another team to prepare for Worlds coming up. But see you guys all in the next video. Peace.